name is Kareem, and today I will be talking to you about Luxor. Luxor is a city in southern Egypt located on the east bank of the Nile River. It holds many of Egyptian monuments that are nearly 3,000 years old. One of those monuments is the Luxor Temple. The temple was built by Amenhotep III but completed by Tutankhamun and then added to by Ramses II. Towards the rear is a granite shrine dedicated to Alexander the Great. It is important to know that Amenhotep III was also known as Amenhotep the Magnificent, and he was the 9th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Luxor was known as the city of thieves and was the capital of Egypt during the time of the New Kingdom. Right in front of the temple are the two obelisks. Unfortunately, the twin obelisk is not at its place anymore. It was transported to France in 1829. Seeing this on a positive tone, fortunately, it decorates one of the most beautiful squares in the French capital, Paris, to inspire tourists to visit Egypt. The two obelisks weren't actually the same size. It was all an optical illusion. It turns out they were 23 meters tall. Also at the entrance are two statues of Ramses II. On the west side is the king with his advisors and general. On the east side, he is shown on his chariot over the dead and dying enemies. Keep in mind that the Luxor temple was built, as well as other temples like the Karnak temple, were built around the time of the New Kingdom. Did you know that the Luxor temple and the Karnak temple are actually connected? They're connected by the Alley of the Sphinx. The Alley of the Sphinx is huge. It connects the Karnak temple to the Luxor temple. It has over 1,350 sphinx, and it's about 3 kilometers long. The Alley of the Sphinx was used for the Opet festival. It was a festival celebrated once a year, so in other words, the second month of the lunar calendar. The festival was for the god Amun, who was the god of the gods. In case you were wondering, Amun was the most powerful god in ancient Egyptian history. In ancient Egyptian civilization, he was called King of Gods. The Luxor temple was built in honor of him. When Amun was combined with the sun Ra, he became even more powerful and became Amun-Ra. The Karnak temple was built almost 2055 BC. It is the largest religious building ever constructed. The Karnak temple was also built in honor of Amun-Ra. Did you know that the Opet festival celebrated for him lasted 27 days? It would start at the Karnak temple, and the priest would go through the Alley of the Sphinx, and it would end at the Luxor temple. The Karnak temple is a series of pylons and chapels, almost like the Luxor temple. Fun fact, the temple has an obelisk that stands at 97 feet tall and weighs a stunning 323 tons. At the entrance of the temple, you can clearly see the unfinished pylon. It was the first pylon. To this day, you can still see the remains of the mud bricks. If the pylon was completed, it will reach a height of 38 to 40 meters. The pylon was built by Nectanebo II, who was a pharaoh and artist from 360 to 342 BC. He was also the third and last pharaoh of the 30th dynasty. After his rule, Egypt was taken over by Alexander the Great in 360 BC. In the Karnak temple, we find the impressive hypostyle hall. The hypostyle hall is a dark room that measures at nearly 5,000 square meters. It was built at the time of the 19th dynasty. This hall was built as a chapel to worship the god Amun. The hall was composed of 134 columns that would support the roof. Unfortunately, the roof has fallen. The columns has a circumference of 10 meters and a height of 24 meters. On each of the columns in the hall, there is hieroglyphic writing. For example, on this column it says, "Son of Ra, loved by Amun-Ra." If you look at the writing, you can see that in some of the letters were surrounded by a cylinder shape. Every time you would see the shape, it would mean that it was the name of a pharaoh. The sentence you could see meant that the king was taking power from the god Amun-Ra. He would say this so that people would respect him and worship him as a king. Ancient Egyptian writing was symbols and pictures. At first, these symbols were used to represent objects only, but later, they started to represent them as sounds as well. Egyptian hieroglyphic writing was very simple when you think about it. For example, A would be a bird, or B would be a foot. In the hypostyle hall, there are many different types of columns. For example, the papyrus columns, the lotus columns, and the palm columns. The Temple of Deir el-Bahari is one of the most beautiful temples out there. It was built in the 15th century and built by Hatshepsut, who was the only female Egyptian pharaoh. The temple is located at the west bank of the Nile River, opposite to the town of Luxor. The temple was a memorial temple and resembles Greek temples from 1,000 years later. Did you know that Hatshepsut was one of the most successful rulers ancient Egypt ever had? One of her greatest achievements was expanding the trade routes of ancient Egypt. She made an expedition into the land of Punt. The land of Punt was the ancient Egyptian kingdom known for producing then exporting gold, ivory, blackwood, ebony, and wild animals. Hatshepsut was born in the year 1508 BC and died in 1458 BC. Hatshepsut was the daughter of the king Thutmose I. She married her half-brother Thutmose II when she was 12 years old in the year of 1473 BC. When Hatshepsut's father died, her brother Thutmose II took over for a few years, but all her siblings died after a few years of her father's death. It was then that Hatshepsut became the first female Egyptian pharaoh in order to continue onto the 18th dynasty. Thutmose I was the first ever pharaoh to be buried in the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings is a pathway located between two mountains in which holds the tombs of 62 pharaohs. The valley was on the west bank of the Nile River, where the sun sets. They would do this because the Egyptians believed that it would be the end of this life, but the pharaohs would resurrect into the afterlife. This is why they would put all their possessions in the tombs. The valley was built because the Egyptians were scared of thieves that would steal gold and treasure from the pyramids. In the valley, the tombs was buried so that no one can find them. Any thief that would be caught would be put to death. Fun fact, when the pharaohs died, they would be happy and have a celebration because they believed in resurrection.